The 7th of November 2025, Taoiseach goes to Brazil while Billy Gates flip-flops. The climate conference is on in Brazil. Today is the 7th of November 2025, and it's overcast with drops of rain starting to fall here in rural Ireland. Several world leaders all fly out by plane, tons and tons of carbon, choking the whole atmosphere according to them. And none of them fly in the one group. You'd think the whole Europeans would all go in one group. Well, Sir Keir Starmer's gone off in his airplane, and Micheál Martin's gone off in his airplane, and they land and they have to be taken back, presumably with a commercial flight, but whatever. Now, he was interviewed yesterday, Micheál Martin, and he said the reason he went was no sign of Donald Trump. America's not represented. He's going to go. And the next thing then is he says the Chinese are not here. They're big emitters of CO2. So I'm here, and that's as good. So he equates himself in his head with President Trump and President Xi of China. Now, this is supposed to be a forest business thing, and maybe they'll persuade Brazil not to cut down all its forests, which is a crime, really, an environmental crime. But here in Ireland, they bulldoze all the grouse moors. They've destroyed the grouse population, putting up their green energy, and done untold damage to offshore ecosystems with their big, huge windmills out there. So they can't wait to do destruction as long as they get money, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. And no one ever asked the question, when you pay extra for green stuff, where does the money you get to pay for it come from? What generated it? What fuel? No one ever asked that question. Anyway, this coincides in timing with Bill Gates. Now, Bill Gates is a school dropout who managed to get in with Microsoft, and he done a good enough job, an operating system in America that's your Windows, and I think Google and all of them, most of those platforms connect to him in some way, but not all. Anyway, in Europe, there is not one equivalent to Facebook, Twitter, Meta, TikTok. Europe has absolutely no IT social media platforms at all, nor has Britain. All American based with a tiny piece of Chinese. Does that not tell you something? Does that not tell you something when it's these high-tech giants from America that invent all this? And does that not say something about the American political system, which provides the capitalist society that allows people to become very rich from being inventive from the beginning? And is that not what founded America with Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, all these entrepreneurs and people who made technical stuff and turned technical stuff, whether it be Carnegie's railway lines or Henry Ford's Model Ts or whatever it was, they applied that to become very rich and advance the countries they were in. So you see the point I'm making. Europe had a vibrant car industry. Europe had a vibrant car industry, and it's been wrecked. The wrecking ball has been taken to it. So Micheál Martin went anyway. So if we look at the original climate scare, it was started by Al Gore in 2006 with a film called The Inconvenient Truth, which was a massive tissue of lies. But Gore had a lot to gain, and gained an awful lot from it, financially. So among the things he promised was the polar ice caps would be long gone by now. Long gone. And this was swallowed by Radio Television Sheridan, which is not the same as this, RTE, the BBC, who were recently caught splicing videos of Trump's statement to say something totally different, got away with it scot-free. And you had then, growing on the back of this, you had Greta Thunberg, who now appears to have abandoned the whole thing, and she's gone off to Palestine or something like that. So this is the story. But these people led our policy. People like me or you or ordinary people had no say in the compilation of these policies. So Bill Gates said that climate change is a huge, as they use the word existential. Why they use this word existential? The brief dictionary meaning I have here is of relating to or dealing with existence. Existential threat. So what it seems to mean is that the people of Pompeii in the year 79 AD, they did have an unknown existential threat, the explosion of the volcano that killed them all. That definitely affected their existence. So this is the way it's applied nowadays, though there's no such thing as anything suddenly happening with climate change. They say it's over a period of time, and we have our Mary Robinson. She nods her head like this: 1.5%, 1.5%, 1.5%. We didn't hear our new president, Catherine Connolly. She's due to come out fighting climate change quite soon, I think, but I'm not sure. So now, Bill Gates was committed to it, and he had money to make when he was doing it. Also, he was committed on the COVID. It was a terrible thing. We had to have vaccines, and he had all his shares. He had all his shares in the vaccine companies as well. And so by getting the governments to buy and force the vaccines on people, he had money to make. And then as soon as he gets the top of his shares, he sells the shares, and then he tells us, I was only cotton. I was only having you on. He was photographed as an associate of Jeffrey Epstein, by the way, but I can say no more than that. I know no more than that. Doesn't seem to be doing people in England any good, at high-profile people. But after he pushed the COVID vaccines and all that, he turned around and he said, it's not as bad as it is at all. Not that bad at all. Might affect some elderly people if they got it, and it is a bad dose of the flu, which is what we all said. But that's not what was pushed in the media. We were told we were going to die if we didn't take the vaccine, and here am I, and I took no vaccine. I'm still here. So on climate change, he's now reversed his position, and he says that even with climate change, people will be able to live and thrive. We'll get on the best. Now, where did you people hear that before? There wouldn't be a certain farmer with cows saying this. So what these big crowd are doing with the money, and this is a school dropout, Bill Gates, what they're doing is they're creating a stir, they invest in the stock, and when the governments, when the people elect Alexa Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin, and people before puberty, and the Labour Party, they push this, and then they probably get a bit of money on the QT. Fianna Fáil TD John McGuinness told me that. He says, this is what it's all about. So it's the same. If you can create a scare, you can get money in for whatever thing you're doing. Now, what Bill Gates said a few years ago was that just look at the heat waves, the storms caused by global temperatures. Nothing matters more than limiting the temperature. He said climate change will decimate civilization. It will decimate civilization. Just look at all around you. He's now come along and said, fortunately for all of us, this view is wrong. So this fella told us climate change was the most serious threat to us. And now, in 2025, he says, oh, this is wrong. This view is wrong. He doesn't say I was wrong, talking to himself. This view is wrong. Spread it out. So he's completely changed his tune. He says people will be able to thrive in most places on Earth for the foreseeable future. The first thing I would say about him is that he realises that the climate change boondangle, or the pendulum, is swinging away. We're winning. People like me are destroying him, which is exactly what I set out to do. We're winning, and he wants to be in before the general public turn, because if he stays in the climate change band, they'll put him down with it. So he wants to get out before it's all falls asunder. Now, he's also pushed an investor in Beyond Meat, trying to create artificial meat and artificial butter. Another thing that he's realising is that after all being told by our Eamon Cabbagehead Ryan, Ed Miliband, and all this, that we have to cut down on the generation of electricity. We have to revert over to wind energy and solar energy, which I think that people are realising now through their electricity bills, if nothing better, is a scam. And they see the fossil fuel still being used, and wars being fought over fossil fuel all over the world. So they now, Bill Gates, it would be an IT man, and that needs data centres, and Ireland is a target for data centres, and there's no strategic environmental assessment carried out as required by Article 3.2 of the SCA directive, so they can build what they like, where they like, and because it sounds a wee bit upmarket, a wee bit uppity, or a wee bit sexy, like, oh, data centres. They're piling these data centres into Ireland, using more and more and more fuel, diesel oil, not coal at the minute, and gas, all the gas that they can get. And so he's very worried that his stock in all this IT and all this stuff will crater, because it takes enormous amounts of energy to run data centres, to do cryptocurrency, to do all that sort of thing. And in England, the Keir Starmer is trying to force people to have an identity which will be stored on data centres that will track everything you do. So this new world order is Bill Gates's. He's involved in it and he's invested in it. But the problem is now he can't cut down on electricity and put up the amount of electricity used in the one bracket. He can't do that. So he's trying to move away from that so he'll get his data centres. He's opening a retired nuclear power station called 3 Mile Island. I think it's in Pennsylvania. And I remember it exploding with an enormous damage. It was shut down. He's opening it again to feed his data centres. So this is the fella that was scaring us about climate change. We have to build windmills and solar farms. We have to move over to electric cars. We have to stop having fires in our homes. And here he's opening a nuclear power station to feed the glutton of the world he's trying to create with the votes of the ordinary jackass working man and man on the dole and ordinary people. I vote for them all. I vote for them all. So another thing that's bothering him, he's moving on to this thing called One Health. In other words, that everyone on the planet's entitled to good health. So he says, oh, beef and butter is bad, so we'll bring in a synthetic version of it, and that'll do you good enough. In other words, we'll force you to be vegetarian, and that'll shut down McDonald's unless they can come up with a suitable alternative. Also, you have to think how the animals feel. You have to think how the plants feel. Oh, you're burning timber. Will you cut down that tree now? There was birds in that tree. The fact that you can have a sustainable, as I have on my farm, method of forestry doesn't apply to him at all. It has to be led from the top. So the United Nations and the World Health Organization is rapidly pushing very hard to give control over to big corporations, big pharma, big food, and nothing for the ordinary way of working. The little way we've started up our co-ops in Ireland, our farming co-ops, agricultural co-ops, that type of thing, that must go. So they can't allow local people to have the benefits of their own work. The benefits of our own work. Somebody rightly commented on my channel a while back, why did we not get a financial benefit for all the technology? We have all our agriculture online. We have our mobile phones, which means you can take a phone out of your pocket and ring your contractor and book him, or you can ring a load of concrete. The efficiencies that created should have resulted in a payback for the ordinary people, and yet the ordinary people are still working for the same old wages. Where's the money gone? It's gone into the big companies, which are directly supported by the British Labour and Conservative Party, by the EU, by Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Labour, and they don't even have the brains even to question this stuff or even to look at the overall picture. But these few people, a school dropout, Bill Gates, a school dropout, Greta Thunberg, have cost the ordinary person billions and left them that the mother can't cook a dinner for her children when they come home because they have her with prepaid meters, and if she hasn't money in the meter, the kids go with cold dinners. This is the cruelty that I fight, and this is why I fight it. I don't care whether I win or not. The thing is, you fight it and maybe something good would come out of it. He's big into data centres. He's a big investor in them. They need vast amount of electrical power for the triacs or the semiconductors. Putting it in simple terms, there are three legs. This one here, these two are the output. There's one. We'll say that there's the phone. There's one wire going into the phone. There's one wire coming back out. It goes through a switch which controls the power in and out from the other leg, and there's a third wire then which gives it a very tiny current, and as you vary the current in the semiconductor, you vary the current in the going in and out to whatever you're driving. Now, it takes a lot of power to do that, and that creates heat, and if you didn't have a way of taking the heat away, the thing would heat up, and so they put a heat sink, usually copper or aluminium, and some of these in the big data centers require a flow of water through them to cool them. They need a flow of water to cool them. So you have energy from coal, oil and gas going in, and you have water then cooling them going out. It's a bit like the Turf power station or the Peat power station in Lanesborough, Longford in Ireland. There was hot water there, which was great for fishing. You boil use the turf to boil the water to make steam, to make electricity, and then you have to cool the water down using the River Shannon. You don't use the water in the River Shannon. It's the same water recycled. They call it a condensing steam turbine. So Gates is now moving on. He's made enough out of the COVID. He's made enough out of climate. And now he said, well, don't worry about it now. That's all right. All that old hype is all right. The environment destroyed. And the people left fighting. And some people broke, had to raise hundreds of thousands to sue these creeps. And that's enough now. He moves on to the next thing. Get people away from that, and then he wants his data centers. That's where the big money is, and that's closer to his heart, and they use a lot of electricity, so he doesn't want you worrying about climate. Pump it up in the air, it doesn't matter. And then he's getting sick of people asking him why he flies in a private jet, and then he realizes he has to cool them, cool his data centers. And when you cool the data centers, you need water, and where does the water come from? You take it off the people. So in Ireland now, they're thinking of moving water from the Shannon River over to Dublin. Imagine the cost of that at our expense. Local authorities, is not at Bill Gates' expense. So this is why we don't get the payment for the new technology. Somebody else comes up with a new idea and gets the whole cream, just leaving the people with just enough to get by. And that was always the policies of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Labour and Sinn Féin. Always give you enough, keep you poor, keep telling you when you go to vote, we look after the poor man, never thinking, what if there are no poor men? What if people come up and have enough themselves? Well, then you see they have no reason to win an election. And this is the repeated process you get all over the developed world. So it started with Bill Gates getting on the bandwagon with climate change. Then he blamed the cows. I personally got letters from my farm to get rid of some cows. He blamed the cows. He said they were emitting gas. Now he come up with fake meat and fake milk. Get rid of the beef and the milk. So that was the idea there, to brainwash you. And then he cashes in his stock on that, having made money, and he moves on to the new thing, which he realizes that the transmission of data and all this mad data that we have, instead of Ireland just having enough for its basic works and its basic computers, we have to take it on for the whole world. If we ever got to change a government, we'd tear them down and hump them off. So we now have to do without electricity and water. And in the town of Kingscourt, planning permission has already been refused because there are inadequate sewage services. There are adequate water services, but in other parts of the country there are not adequate water services. So you see what the voters for Fine Gael do. They give all over to Bill Gates and the likes of them, the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization, and they're already, only for Trump, they'd already have a new vaccine, a multi-all vaccine compulsory. During the COVID, which I was closed down on Facebook for warning people, I now see that there are a lot of cases of Alzheimer's. People who got the injection, the COVID vaccine, in their 60s and 70s and even earlier, are now all in nursing homes with no brain. The amount of people I know who are severely affected by Alzheimer's, by cognitive decline, who don't know where they are, is unbelievable. And I mentioned there about an undertaker in England. Someone said, was his name Lunny or Looney? It doesn't matter anyway. Who deals with funerals of certain people who die and have to have an autopsy, and he goes in and out and he's familiar with the people carrying out the autopsy, and some people's heads are full of clots. The veins are full of a solid, semi-solid substance. And that is very strange why that manifests itself now. I done everything I could to warn people to stay away. I never took it myself. I warned most of my family, and they took one or two because they were told they had to. And the nurses were forced to take this junk into them. And this fella, Bill Gates, he was making the money all the way to the bank, and now he's moving over. He's forgetting about, oh, well, forget about that now. We're on to something new. And because he knows that the Irish and European government, and it looks like in America, the socialists are on the rise there again, they all support the big company, and they need to keep the ordinary person with enough to live on, but not too much, so they can always offer him at elections a bit more. The idea that you build up, you were a poor man's from a poor family, a big family, you did well in this world, you're all right, and you want to spend your money as you wish, that cannot be allowed. That is for the state. That's what the new mayor of New York believes in, and that's what you're going to get. So that when I'm offering you the reasons why this is happening, I'm afraid I can't offer you a way to change voting. I don't think it'll stop. I think it's just all I can do is let you know how it's happening. The media never introduce Bill Gates when they're interviewing him as a school dropout. Never. With no qualification in food, science, or anything else. Right? He got it lucky. He was good at the IT. Many people were. I had relatives who were great, who could pick up a musical instrument and play it, and I had relatives who could take a television and identify what was wrong with it with no education at all. You'll get that. You can have that. But they never introduced him as anything other than Bill Gates. He knows it all, and he knows sweet nothing. Okay? They never introduced him as that. But when RFK, Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy, who is in the Trump administration as the food man, and health, and he was Trump told him, you go ahead now with your health, make America healthy, keep out of my business and I'll keep out of yours. And that's a reasonably good deal. But every time the media introduce RFK or talk about him, they say, oh, he has no qualification. Even though he's a lawyer who has sued many of the food companies and won for their fake food and fake drugs. So you see how the media is bought over by all of these people. The two biggest ballers about climate change, Bill Gates and never finished college, and Greta Thunberg never finished school, and they're the ones that's driving the entire economy of the world. And then this is what the EU takes on board, and the American Democrats takes on board, and many in the West takes on board, and they devote everything to fighting climate change, and they close down their factories. They have no manufacturing, they have nothing. And when Putin decides that he has a weak spot and decides to do his thing in Ukraine and maybe elsewhere, they're then saying, oh, how are we going to fight him? We get the Americans to fight him. So what does their young people matter? Sure, if they're killed, what does it matter us? And then President Trump says, well, I'm not doing that. I'll help you a bit, I'll push a bit, but I ain't going to have my boots on the ground from American soldiers. We have better things to do with them. And so they discover they have nothing. They have no weapons, they have no arms, they have nothing. And all they're doing is bringing out all kinds of ridiculous green stuff and sustainability, making countries that supply them with gas and oil state where they got it, and they're fighting back against that. So this is the ridiculous situation you have. Universities, student loan schemes, educational grants. One thing every student has to mention in their thesis or in their examinations which involve stuff that's, well, even electrical engineering possibly, but definitely more or less exact sciences. They have to be roaring about climate change. Climate change has to be the footnote in everything, or you won't get what you want. That's the control. They control the universities, they control the schools, they control the media, they control the government. And people say, oh, Trump's not that good now, you know. Well, he's not one of them, and that's for sure. But that's not to say the people around him aren't, but he's directly not one of them. And RFK is not one of them. And he's costing them millions. They were poisoning the American people with substances that RFK is trying to sort out. You don't need an education. As some people say to me, you seem to know everything. You don't need that much education. You can research a thing yourself, and you can often do it fairly and more objectively than people who have money to make or money to lose by getting it different. The way these big companies work is they tell you, oh, we need this, we need lithium for windmills, we need battery storage. They go to countries where the poor locals are not too well educated, which are kept down, in some cases where they control them, and they grab all the resources there, and then they sell them back to the likes of you and me at a premium, and they are laughing all the way to the bank. This was the case in 3 African states, Burkina Faso, Niger and Mali, and Ibrahim Traore and his people there have turned on the Europeans and drove them out, drove the French out. They were stealing their gold, and they were stealing their yellow cake, their uranium ore. And they were stealing a lot of other minerals. And the EU still will not allow coffee or cocoa, which is manufactured in Africa by African co-ops. They won't allow it to come into the EU even today. They have to get the raw material and manufacture it in Europe to keep up the nice jobs in Lind and Cadbury's and all these, Nestle and all of these, for their chocolate boxes. Okay, so you see the way this is done. Africa's making a pushback now, and the Russians and the Chinese are trying to get their hands on the resources, but in a fairer way, and the Europeans were being pushed out. Victoria Nuland flew over to Burkina Faso to give them the American angle, that they had to stop this, that they had to give the Americans and the French everything they wanted, and they put her on a plane and ran her back out with a kick in the ass out. And this Ukraine war was the same, looking for the resources, and the ultimate objective was to grab the resources of Russia, and they want to control us through our government, and this can be stopped by voting intelligently. And that's why everyone who believes what I'm saying, you must influence other people and get them to stop, for a start, voting for the main parties. We'll see what happens in Britain in the next election. But the left always has this motive. Tell the people they're going to save you from capitalism. When you go to make a bit of money, keep you down. Block industry, stop you getting up, keep you relatively poor, and then they can sell their socialism to you. Oh, we'll give you more dole, we'll give you more healthcare, we'll give you a bigger pension, we'll give you better transport. Offer you these things that you should be able to provide from your own resources. That's the game, and that still works with a lot of people. They still vote for that. The International Climate Change Panel, or whatever you call it, the original fellow in charge of that for many years, he was Peshur. He was a railway engineer from New York with Indian origins, a railway engineer. He was the one who told us about the global warming. The Climate Change Committee puts out a policy document agreed by all the compliant governments and all the compliant International Wildlife Fund. First, they get agreement that that's the objective, and then they tailor the scientific report to suit that. It's not the other way around. The big thing about them is they're always lying. And the safest way for ordinary people to look at the Irish, the British, the European and the American and all the governments is, maybe with a slight exception of the Trump administration, which may not last, is you're being lied to. L-I-E-D, lied. Lied with barefaced lies. On Radio Television Sheridan in Ireland, every month was hotter than the one preceding it. It's the hottest October on record. We're waiting for that. That'll be out tomorrow probably. And it stands to reason that if every month is slightly hotter and every year is slightly hotter, that over a period of 20 years, if it's only a quarter of a degree, that to me is 5 degrees. That would change everything, change the whole nature of the earth. 5 degrees. Yet, and then on record, they never tell us when the record started. Where were the records in America? Sure, there was no people there up to 200 years ago, or thereabouts, or a little more. Where are the records in Australia? Are you telling me somebody was taking temperature in Australia 300 years ago? Were they taking them in Ireland? And what length is 300 years anyway? Evidence of natural climate change is all around us. A good while ago, Bill Gates is on record of this statement. We've got that many people. Sorry, how do I do it? Yeah, we have that many people and we have that much energy. We can't have an expansion of the people because we don't have the energy. We have to therefore cut the population. And many of them that's pushing this have their origins in what they call eugenics, population control. And are in many ways somewhat racist in that they believe that the white race is superior to all other races, which is a bit strange for me to be saying, but that's sort of where it gets its origin, the control of the people and the control of it by them, where they can make money, but also those who do well and are billionaires, they have a few children and they would like to pass on some kind of an idealistic planet to them. They won't be culled. But if some person has a big family, or some person in Africa has a big family, that's a threat. But it's not a threat if the resources of the African continent were preserved for the African people. They started off taking them as slaves. And then they started taking all their wood and their timber. And slowly but surely, there's a different view in the world that the African people should run their own economies, and that's sort of coming round. So, folks, Bill Gates has done a flip-flop. Greta Thunberg is off on Gaza or something else. And we are left in Ireland with politicians wedded to the climate nonsense. They're trying more ways to take out beef and meat, to take out milk and replace it with some type of a margarine. And they're pushing this over at the climate summit and they're talking nonsense. There is no basis for what they're saying. It's all a scam. There's a man called James Corbett has written books on this, several more. And yet we have to sit and watch as we are kept poor. Our electricity bills are going through the roof, and what are we getting back? The destruction of our environment. Have I made that relatively clear? That's the important point. I'm tying in the climate summit is at COP30 in Brazil, and our stupid Taoiseach going to it, and Keir Starmer never hear care, and the place falling asunder in England. And I don't know who'll attend. You could get some other leaders. It's on for 11 days in Brazil. 11 days. Now, will they do something about cutting down the rainforest and protecting the native tribes there? Well, we'll see. We'll see. The EU is after handing, I think it's something like billions. I can't even think the amount to Africa for renewable energy. So the reports of the amount, they're giving it to South Africa. One report here on Reuters news agency says they're giving 11.5 billion euros to South Africa for green junk. Another one says they're giving 4.7 billion for green junk. And another one says, 4.7 at least. And that's probably the start off to put up windmills and everything else. Eddie O'Connor, the Irish wind farm man, tried that and it failed miserably. But sure, who'll refuse money? So isn't that a lot of money? 11.5 billion. Why don't they give it to Ukraine instead? Pull the money from us. And don't let us get too rich. And don't let us get too smart. Tell us what to do from the media up the way. come up with all sorts of harebrained schemes that let somebody invent stuff that's no good. You see myself even doing experiments with motors and the lathe and making steam engines and how stuff like that and experiments and seeing how it works. They're able to do that, but they get you and I to pay for their daydreams. We're not. We have to make our own. And then if the whole thing flops, you throw it over on the state, like NAMA for windmills, as the Irish economist Colin McCarthy promised. That's the story with this baloney. And the independent TDs in Ireland need to be contacted and told they must withdraw their support from government after next summer. Any year they have a say or can email them, say, you don't withdraw your support, we're not going it. Why are we backing up Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil by people who are elected by an electorate that doesn't want Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael anymore? If they did, they'd have voted for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. That's 35 minutes, but that's the Climate Summit. I hope that's a help. It's a lot to take in. A lot of people will never take it in. All the few of us can do is bring it to your attention and hope something grows out of it. Comment underneath. Thank you very much. We'll see you back soon. Good luck.